At my wife Linda's funeral, I watched my daughter Carol perform her grief. She sobbed into her hands, her shoulders shaking dramatically, but I didn't see a single tear hit the ground. Her husband Timothy stood beside her, rubbing her back, but his eyes kept darting to his phone. 3 days. My wife of 45 years had been gone for 3 days, and Timothy was already checking his messages. Back at the house, they were already whispering about selling it, about moving me to a home before the casserole dishes were even cold. They didn't know about the sealed envelope Linda left me 6 months ago. They didn't know about the downtown condo or the $280,000 in the private account. So, when my daughter walked into my room a week later and said, "Start packing, Dad. We need to talk about your future," I just smiled. I had already packed, but the bags weren't mine. They were theirs. My name is Ronald Peterson. I'm 67 years old. And before I tell you how I turned their greed against them, let me explain how we got here. The November air was cold, but not as cold as my daughter's heart. I stood there at the graveside, the smell of damp earth filling my lungs. Linda was gone. 45 years of marriage, just gone. Carol, my daughter, my only child, was making a show of collapsing against Timothy. He held her, but his face was a mask of impatience. I watched him glance at his phone again. That was the 4th time in 10 minutes. I heard one of Linda's cousins whisper, "Look at her, not a real tear in her eye." I wanted to tell her that's because she's already calculating. The ride back to our house on Maple Drive was silent. We'd lived in that 3-bedroom ranch for 40 years. I'd built the deck out back with my own hands when I was still working construction. Every weekend for a month, I'd hauled lumber and mixed concrete, creating something that would last. Linda had planted the rose garden that now bloomed every spring, each bush carefully chosen and tended. She knew which varieties would survive Georgia summers and which would bloom longest. It was our sanctuary, our piece of the American dream that I'd earned with 40 years of swinging a hammer. I started as an apprentice carpenter right out of high school, working on residential developments across Atlanta. Learned every trade from foundation to roofing. By the time I was 30, I was running crews of 15 men, coordinating electrical, plumbing, and finish work. I understood property, understood what made a house valuable. I'd built homes for judges and doctors, but this little ranch on Maple Drive was the one I was proudest of. As soon as we walked in, the silence felt wrong, heavy, suffocating. Carol and Timothy had been living with us for 3 years, ever since Timothy's marketing company downsized and he couldn't find steady work. They took the master bedroom because, as Carol explained, "Dad, you don't need all that space, and Timothy needs the home office for his job search." His job search. 3 years of networking, events and LinkedIn updates, but somehow never quite landing that perfect opportunity. I'd watch him in the mornings, sitting at Linda's antique desk in our bedroom, typing on his laptop. He'd dress up for interviews that always seemed to end with him coming home frustrated, talking about how companies weren't ready for his level of expertise. I went to make coffee in the kitchen, needing the comfort of routine. The kitchen was my favorite room, where Linda and I had shared 40 years of morning conversations over coffee and evening meals. The honey-colored cabinets we'd installed ourselves still looked good, though Carol constantly criticized them as dated. The appliances were older, but functional. Everything worked. Everything had a story. I stopped when I heard them whispering from the living room. "Did you ask him yet?" Carol's voice was sharp, cutting through the house's silence like a blade. "Not now, baby," Timothy mumbled. "It's not the right time. Your mom just—" "It's the perfect time," she hissed. "He's emotional. He's vulnerable. We need to know what's happening with the house. We can't wait around forever, Timothy. We have our own lives to think about." I heard Timothy sigh. It was the sound of a man who had given up fighting long ago. "Just give it a week, please. Let's show a little respect." Respect? The word sounded foreign coming from his mouth. We've been respectful for 3 years. We've put our lives on hold, living in this outdated house, dealing with his stubborn, old-fashioned ways. We deserve better than this. I didn't let them know I heard. I made my coffee and went to the guest room, which had become my room when they moved in. I sat on the edge of the single bed and looked across the hall at what used to be my bedroom, my room, Linda's room, the room where she'd taken her last breath while they were out at a restaurant, celebrating Timothy's latest job prospect that never materialized. I walked in, it still smelled like vanilla, and old books. On the nightstand was her reading glasses, folded next to the novel she'd never finish. In the closet hung the dress she'd worn to our 40th anniversary dinner, navy blue with tiny white flowers. I knew exactly what they were whispering about: the house, the land, the money. They thought I was just a confused old man, a 67-year-old construction worker who didn't understand how the world worked anymore. They thought that, with Linda gone, I was just a final obstacle between them and what they believed they deserved. I went to her closet, past the dresses I knew I would never see her wear again. I reached behind her stack of winter sweaters, my fingers touching familiar fabric. My fingers found what I was looking for: a thick manila envelope. I pulled it out. My name, Ronald, was written on the front in her elegant handwriting. I remembered the day she gave it to me 6 months ago. She was sitting up in our bed, the cancer already taking its toll, but her eyes were sharp and focused. "Don't open this, Ronald," she had whispered, pressing it into my hands with surprising strength. "Not until you really need to. Not until you see our daughter forget who she is." I had looked at her, confused. "Forget who she is? What are you talking about, Linda?" She just squeezed my hand with those thin fingers. "You'll know, my love. You'll know when it's time. I've taken care of you. I've always taken care of you, even when you didn't know it." I didn't understand then. But holding that envelope now, hearing their whispers from downstairs, I understood perfectly. She knew. She had seen this coming. She had seen the greed in Timothy's eyes when he looked at our house. She had seen the entitlement growing in our daughter. Linda was always more perceptive than me, always seeing the angles I missed. I clutched the envelope. "Not yet, Linda. Not yet." I was still holding it when the door opened without a knock. Carol stood there, her black funeral dress already changed into jeans and a sweater. She wasn't even pretending to mourn anymore. "Dad, good, you're in here," she said, her voice bright and artificial. I was thinking, I know this is hard, but we should probably start cleaning out Mom's closet. You know, get these things sorted. It's better to just clear the space, get a fresh start. She wasn't asking, she was telling me. Less than 4 hours after we buried Linda, and she was talking about clearing the space. "No," I said. My voice was quiet, but it had steel in it that surprised even me. Carol's smile faltered. "What? No, leave her things. I'm not ready." She let out an exasperated sigh, dropping the facade completely. "Dad, you can't just cling to the past forever. It's not healthy. Timothy and I are just trying to help you move forward." "I'll move forward when I'm ready," I said, sliding the envelope back into its hiding place. "Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to be alone." Carol stared at me, her eyes narrowing. She had expected a broken old man she could push around. She found something else. She turned and walked out, her footsteps angry on the hardwood floor. "He's being difficult," I heard her tell Timothy downstairs. I knew right then that whatever respect Timothy had asked for wouldn't even last the night. Just 2 days. That's all Carol managed. 2 days after we put Linda in the ground, she found me in the living room reading the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. She looked energetic, holding a stack of glossy brochures like a deck of cards. "Dad," she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. "I know this is all so hard right now." She sat on the arm of Linda's favorite chair, a place she had never sat before. "Timothy and we're just so worried about you." I lowered the newspaper. "Worried about what, Carol?" "About you being here alone in this big house," she said, opening the first brochure. "It's too much for one person. The upkeep, the stairs, the memories, as if she had any right to speak about them. This house held 40 years of Christmas mornings, birthday parties, and quiet Sunday afternoons. It held the memory of Carol's first steps in the hallway, her graduation photos on the mantelpiece, the arguments we'd had when she was a teenager testing boundaries. I thought back 3 years, Carol standing in this exact spot, her eyes downcast, with what I mistook for humility. "Just temporarily, Dad. Timothy's company is restructuring. I just need a place to get back on our feet. We'll be out before you know it." Linda, bless her heart, had opened her arms immediately. "This is your home, sweetheart. Always." That first week, Carol had been different, helpful. She'd cooked dinner twice, helped Linda with the grocery shopping, and Timothy had actually fixed the leaky faucet in the guest bathroom. I thought maybe this arrangement would be good for all of us. family together, helping each other through tough times, but temporary turned into permanent. They moved in, and within a week, Carol had suggested we swap bedrooms. Dad, Timothy and I just need the master. I'm working on my real estate license, and I need the space for studying. Her real estate license. She'd been working on it for 2 years, taking online courses and attending weekend seminars, always one test away from finally getting it done. So Linda and I, after 40 years in our bedroom, moved our lives into the smaller guest room. In 3 years, they had not paid a single utility bill, not $1 toward the mortgage or property taxes. They ate our food, used our electricity, ran up the cable bill with premium channels we never watched. They lived off the retirement I had earned from 40 years of getting up at 5 a.m. and working until dark, and the savings Linda had carefully built from her part-time bookkeeping jobs. And now this woman was worried about me being alone. "It's a lot to manage," I said, keeping my voice neutral. Her smile widened. She thought I was agreeing. She spread the brochures on the coffee table. "That's why I found these. This one is my favorite. It's called Sunset Manor. It's a premier retirement community." I looked at the picture, smiling seniors playing shuffleboard on a pristine lawn. It looked less like a home and more like a well-decorated prison. "It's perfect for you," she said. "Completely secure, gourmet meals, social activities, and 24/7 nursing staff." "I'm 67 years old, Carol. I'm not sick. I don't need a 24/7 nurse." The fake sympathy evaporated instantly. "Well, we need the peace of mind," she said, her voice becoming hard. "And honestly, Timothy and I need our own space. We've put our lives on hold for 3 years. We can't move forward if we're constantly worried about you." The lie was so blatant it was almost impressive. They couldn't move forward, as if my presence was the only thing stopping them from success. As if the man who had paid for their groceries, their utilities, their cell phone, bills was somehow holding them back. "So what you're saying," I said slowly, "is that you want to sell this house?" Carol's eyes narrowed. The mask was completely off. "It's the most practical solution for everyone." That evening, Timothy tried his turn. He waited until Carol was in their room, reality TV shows blaring through the door. He came and sat across from me at the kitchen table, putting on his sincere face, the same face he'd worn 3 years ago when he promised this would be temporary. "Dad, about earlier today. Carol comes on a little strong sometimes. She doesn't mean it badly, she's just practical. You know how women are about planning ahead." I waited, saying nothing. "But she's right about one thing," he continued. "We are worried about you. This is a big house. Selling it just makes sense." He picked up the Sunset Manor brochure. "This place is top-notch. Everything taken care of. Your meals, your security." He paused, then played what he thought was his ace. "And the money from the house, Dad. It would pay for a suite at Sunset Manor for the rest of your life. Easy. And there'd be a good bit left over for emergencies." A good bit left over. My stomach tightened. I knew exactly what leftover meant in Timothy's vocabulary. My mind snapped back 10 years. Carol, 32 years old, her eyes shining with determination. She had a business plan, a boutique consulting firm, specializing in small business marketing. She just needed seed money. "Dad, I'm on the verge of something huge," she'd said, pacing this very kitchen. "I just need $35,000. I can't ask Mom. She wouldn't understand business, but you do. You've managed construction crews. This is just people management with computers. I was a fool. I was proud. My daughter, the entrepreneur. I pulled $35,000 out of my 401k. $35,000 of 40 years of early mornings and aching backs. I never told Linda. I couldn't. I lied to her about the account, told her the market had dipped. The consulting firm lasted 8 months. The $35,000 vanished into office rent, computer equipment, business lunches, and a marketing campaign that brought in exactly 0 clients. She never paid back a dime. She never even apologized. She just failed quietly and moved on to the next thing. And here was her husband, 10 years later, sitting across from me with that same gleam in his eyes, talking about a good bit left over. "I need time," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "This is my home. It's your mother's home." Timothy's patience snapped. "Time for what, Dad? What's time going to do? Mom's gone." He stood up, knocking his chair back. What's the point of you staying here, sitting in this museum? It's falling apart. The wiring is old. Carol hates this kitchen. Carol hates the kitchen, I repeated, not as a question but as a statement. Timothy realized his mistake, but instead of backing down, he doubled down. Look, it doesn't matter. We've already called an appraiser. We're getting a head start on the paperwork. They're coming Friday. Friday morning came too fast. At 10 sharp, the doorbell rang. Before I could push myself up from my chair, Carol darted to the door. "You must be Oliver," she chirped, her voice higher than usual. A young man in a shiny suit stepped inside, holding a digital tablet. He looked like a shark smelling blood in the water. "Great to meet you, Carol," he said, shaking her hand firmly. "Timothy had to step out for a client meeting, but I can show you everything. We're handling the estate." Estate, like I was already dead. She led him through the house, and I followed a few steps behind, a ghost in my own home. She was a natural performer, pointing at walls, gesturing grandly. "We believe this main wall can be knocked out completely. Open up the entire living space," she said. "And there are original hardwood floors under this old carpet. Lots of potential." She was describing 40 years of my life as potential, as something to be gutted and flipped. Every room had a memory. The living room where we'd watched Carol take her first steps. The hallway where we'd hung her school pictures every year. The den where Linda and I had watched the evening news together for decades. I sat at the kitchen table while they stood plotting in the center of the room. This kitchen was my sanctuary. I looked at the cabinets Linda and I had installed ourselves in 1985. We had argued for an hour at the hardware store. I wanted practical white. She insisted on this warm honey color. "I want a little sunshine in the house, Ronald," she had said, her eyes sparkling, "even on gray days." She was right. She was always right. For 40 years, I'd sat at this very table drinking my morning coffee while she stood at that stove, humming along to the radio, the smell of her coffee mixing with the cinnamon she put in her oatmeal. "This kitchen needs a total gut job," Carol said, her sharp voice cutting through my memory. "Just rip it all out. New, appliances, granite countertops, maybe a big island in the center." Oliver nodded, tapping his tablet. "Definitely. Kitchen is where you make your money back. A full gut might be $25,000 in upgrades, but you'll easily add $40,000 to the sale price." They finished and walked out to the porch to talk numbers. I stayed in the kitchen, but left the door cracked. The wind carried their voices right to me. "So what's the bottom line?" Carol asked, dropping all pretense of being the grieving daughter. "Market's hot," Oliver said. "If you clean it out, maybe throw some paint on the walls, you could list for $475,000, but that'll take time. Staging, open houses, inspections. You'll wait maybe 2 months for the right buyer." "No," Carol said immediately. "We can't wait that long. We need it done fast." "What's the fast price?" I heard Oliver pause. He was good at this, letting her show her desperation. "Okay," he said finally. "You want fast? I have an investor, cash buyer. They buy properties as is, no repairs, no staging, no showings. They'd come in at $425,000, close in 7 days." "Yes," Carol whispered, her voice full of hungry energy. "That one. As fast as possible." 1 week later, on a Sunday that should have been quiet and peaceful, Carol came to me. I was in the living room, trying to read, but the words swam in front of my eyes. Every article reminded me of Linda. Every story made me think of conversations we'd never have. "Dad," she said, standing in the doorway. She was dressed up, looking like she was going somewhere important, not like someone who had just lost her mother. "We need to talk. You need to start packing." I slowly lowered my book. The moment Linda had warned me about had arrived. "Is that so?" She wouldn't look me in the eye. "It's done. Timothy and I accepted an offer on the house. The investor offered $425,000. It's a fantastic deal." She was trying to smile, to sell this to me as a victory. "They want to close fast, 14 days. Cash deal, so no mortgage delays. It's a clean break, Dad. 40 years of memories, graduations, Christmases, arguments, laughter. 45 years of marriage. And my daughter had just sold it all for $425,000, speaking about it with the same emotion she'd used to sell a used car. "And where am I supposed to go, Carol?" Before she could answer, Timothy appeared behind her. He had a triumphant look on his face, like he'd just closed the deal of his career. "We already took care of that, Dad," Carol said. "We put the deposit down on that lovely room at Sunset Manor. They're holding it for you. Your first month is all paid for." They had done it. They had already paid the deposit. They were shipping me out like I was a piece of furniture they didn't need anymore. In that moment, as I looked at their two greedy faces, something crystallized. The grief didn't disappear, but the cold anger in my chest became sharp and clear. This was the moment Linda had warned me about. This was when my daughter had truly forgotten who she was. It was time. I smiled, a small, thin smile that didn't reach my eyes. They both took a step back. "Well," I said, my voice quiet, "that's very efficient of you. Thank you for handling everything." Carol and Timothy exchanged a look of surprised relief. They had expected a fight. "So you understand?" Carol stammered. "You're okay with this?" I slowly pushed myself up from Linda's chair. "Oh, I understand everything, sweetheart. And you're right. We need to get moving." I looked around the room at the life they were so eager to erase. "In fact, I've already packed." Shock passed over Carol's face. "You have?" "Yes, I'm ready," I said. "And the bags are all packed and ready to go. But the bags I packed aren't mine." I looked toward their bedroom. "They're yours." Carol's eyes went wide, then narrowed to slits. "What the hell are you talking about? Are you senile?" "I mean," I said, walking past them to the guest room, "that I am not senile. I am not confused, and I am not rambling." I opened my dresser drawer, pushed aside the socks Linda had organized for me, and pulled out the heavy manila envelope. The ornate key was still tied to it with Linda's blue ribbon. "I am the clearest I have ever been," I said, walking back to the living room. I held up the envelope. "This is from your mother. She asked me to read it when this exact moment happened." I sat down and broke the wax seal. Carol and Timothy stood frozen, completely thrown off balance by my sudden confidence. I unfolded the cream-colored paper. Linda's handwriting was like hearing her voice in the room. "Your mother wrote me a letter," I said, looking at Carol. "She asked me to read it when you did exactly what I was afraid you would do." I began to read aloud. "My dearest Ronald, if you are reading this, it means I am gone, and it means our daughter Carol has done exactly what I was afraid she would do." Carol flinched as if she'd been struck. I continued. "I love our girl, Ronald. I love her more than life. But I am not blind. I know you see her heart, but I see her weakness. She is a good person, but she is weak. She follows. She doesn't lead. She is easily swayed by bright, shiny promises." I paused and looked at Timothy. "And I know her husband. I know Timothy. He is not weak. He is desperate. He is ambitious. And he is greedy. He does not love our daughter, Ronald. He loves what he thinks our daughter will give him." "How dare she?" Carol exploded. "How dare that woman—" "Be quiet," Timothy roared. But it wasn't a defense of me. It was terror. He stared at the letter in my hand, his eyes wide with dread. "What else does it say?" I looked back at the letter. She knew everything, Carol, even the things I tried to hide from her. I read the next devastating lines. "Ronald, I know you gave her the money, the $35,000 10 years ago from your 401k, the money you saved for us." Carol stopped breathing. She looked at me, her face a mask of disbelief. She never thought I would have told Linda. "I never told her," I said softly. "She just knew. She saw the withdrawal slip in your coat pocket when you left it here. She checked our accounts. She knew you had taken it, and she never said a word to either of us. She just protected us both. She protected me from the truth and you from the consequences." I flipped to the next page. "But she did do something. She started to plan." I read the final devastating paragraph. "That day, Ronald, 10 years ago, I took half of our remaining assets. I contacted our old friend Mr. Victor Thompson, and I created an irrevocable trust, the Linda Peterson Family Trust." "A trust?" Timothy's voice was barely audible. "What does that mean?" I folded the letter. "It means, Carol, that 10 years ago, your mother quietly and legally transferred the deed of this house into that trust." I let the words sink in. Carol just stared. Timothy was shaking his head, not understanding. "It means that this house, my house, hasn't been in my name or Linda's name for a decade. It means that you and Timothy just tried to fraudulently sell a property that you do not own." Carol's face turned an ugly shade of red. But you inherit the trust, right? You're the father. Terrence inherits. No, I said, pulling out the final document. I don't inherit it. Your mother was smart, Carol. She knew this day would come. I held up the trust document. The trust names only one person as the sole trustee and beneficiary, me. Carol stared at me for a long moment, then laughed, a sharp, high-pitched shriek. A trust? That's the most pathetic, desperate lie I've ever heard. She turned to Timothy. He's completely lost it. He's senile. Am I? I asked. I reached into my shirt pocket and pulled out my phone. A number was already dialed. You remember your mother's old friend, Mr. Victor Thompson, don't you, Carol? The lawyer? The one who handled your business incorporation. Papers before you ran that consulting firm into the ground? I hit speakerphone. The ringing cut through the room. Ronald, a deep voice answered immediately. I was hoping you'd call. Is everything all right? Everything is fine, Mr. Thompson, I said, my eyes locked on Carol and Timothy. I just have some people here who seem confused about the ownership of this property. I'd be delighted to clarify, the voice said, crisp and professional. Good afternoon. My name is Victor Thompson. I am the acting attorney for the Linda Peterson Irrevocable Trust, established 10 years ago. I can confirm that the property at 1240 Maple Drive is held solely by said trust. He paused, letting the legal weight fill the room. To be perfectly clear, Ms. Carol Peterson has absolutely no ownership stake in this property. Any attempt to sell this asset is null, void, and fraudulent. Fraudulent? Carol grabbed Timothy's arm, her nails digging into his sleeve. But the contract. We signed a contract. Ah, yes, Mr. Thompson said, ice in his voice. The fraudulent document you signed, misrepresenting yourselves as the legal owners. You were planning to steal $425,000. Timothy found his voice. We didn't know. It was a mistake. You were dealing with your late mother's legal team, Thompson cut him off. We've been monitoring this situation. Your appraiser was very cooperative once we explained the legal penalties for real estate fraud. Carol stumbled back. The appraiser was working with you? I looked at my daughter. Who do you think sent Oliver to you in the first place? Carol's head snapped up. What does that mean? That cash buyer offering $425,000, I continued. The one you were so eager to sell to? I let the silence hang heavy in the room. It's a company called R&L Holdings. Timothy frowned. R&L. I've never heard of them. R stands for Ronald. L stands for Linda, I said. The investment company your mother founded 20 years ago. The heir left the room. Carol looked like I had physically struck her. That's right, sweetheart. R&L Holdings is the company your mother ran from her sewing room while you thought she was just doing crossword puzzles, while Timothy thought she was just a simple housewife. I leaned forward. The company that made the cash offer was me. It was my money, run by my lawyer, through my company. I was the buyer all along. Timothy made a choking sound and collapsed into the chair. You set us up. You knew everything. You watched us. Yes, I said. I gave you the rope, and I watched you weave the noose. Carol was broken, but Timothy was different. His mind was already working, already calculating a new angle. Fine, Carol spat, trying to pull herself together. The house is yours. But there's a will, Ronald. You can't write family out of the will. We'll get our share of the rest. You're absolutely right, Carol, I said. There is a will, and Linda was nothing if not thorough. I reached back into the envelope and pulled out another document. Last will and testament of Linda Peterson. Here it is. Article 4, regarding my beloved daughter, Carol Peterson. Carol was practically vibrating with anticipation. To my daughter Carol, I read, I leave you two things. First, I leave you my unending, unconditional love. I have loved you every day of your life, even when you disappointed me. A confused look crossed Carol's face. She was waiting for the second item. Second, I continued, I leave you the $35,000 debt you incurred from your father 10 years ago. A debt he paid from his own retirement. A debt you never repaid. Carol staggered back as if struck. I forgive this debt, Carol, I kept reading. It is paid, but I leave it to you as a reminder of the cost of your choices and the depth of your father's sacrifice. Silence. Devastating silence. That's it? Timothy whispered. No, I said. She left me something else entirely. I pulled out a small key and a folded paper. A key to the downtown condo, the one you never knew about. Second house? Carol whispered. The one your mother bought 15 years ago under R&L Holdings. The one she put in my name 5 years ago. Free and clear. I unfolded a bank statement. And this? $280,000 in a private account she called my Freedom Fund. The number hung in the air. Timothy walked forward, staring at the paper like it was written in a foreign language. All this time, Carol whispered, you let us think you were poor. You wanted to think that, I said coldly. You arrived in this house and saw my simple furniture and old truck. You made a calculation. You didn't see a man, you saw an obstacle. You saw a payday. I went upstairs to their bedroom and packed the 2 large suitcases I had prepared that morning. When I came back down, I called the sheriff's department. The officers arrived within 20 minutes, professional and efficient. The eviction was swift and public. Neighbors watched. From windows and porches as Carol and Timothy stood on the sidewalk with their suitcases, homeless. Carol screamed at Timothy, blaming him. He just stood there, taking it. Then he looked at me with eyes filled with bottomless hatred. You'll regret this, he said quietly. You'll die alone. I met his gaze. Maybe, but I'll die free. 6 months later, I was sitting in my downtown condo, 20 stories up, looking out at the Atlanta skyline. The apartment was modern, clean, nothing like the house on Maple Drive. It was furnished simply but elegantly, Linda's taste revealed at last. The house had sold for $465,000. After legal fees and expenses, every penny went to the Linda Peterson Cancer Research Fund at Emory Hospital. Her name was on a plaque in the oncology wing where she'd spent her last months. I had everything I needed in that condo. The $280,000 gave me more than enough to live comfortably. I didn't need much. I had my books, my coffee, and the peace of knowing Linda's plan had worked perfectly. The criminal charges against Carol and Timothy were dropped after they agreed to community service and restitution. Carol lost her real estate license before she ever earned it. Timothy found work at a call center across town. I got a postcard from them once, from somewhere in Florida. Just 3 words. We're sorry, Dad. I kept it for a day, then threw it away. Some bridges once burned should stay that way. I learned something important in those final months with Linda. Love isn't just protecting someone from consequences. Sometimes love means letting them face the results of their choices. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the dignity of earning their own way. Linda knew that. She saw what our enabling was doing to Carol, what Timothy's desperation was doing to our family. Her final plan wasn't revenge. It was a lesson, a hard, expensive lesson about respect, about family, about the cost of greed. I think about Carol sometimes, wonder if she ever learned it, but mostly I look out my window at the city lights and feel something I hadn't felt in years, completely, perfectly, and devastatingly free. Never underestimate the quiet ones. They see everything, and they're always prepared. When someone shows you their true character through their greed and disrespect, believe them the first time. Because family or not, some people will always choose money over love, and the only person you can truly count on to protect your dignity is yourself.